If you had a time machine and you could go to any place in history, where's the first place you would go?
Yeah, I would go back to the Garden of Gethsemane.
The Garden of Gethsemane.
It's the public park where Jesus was arrested.
You are obsessed with this.
Yeah, I think
you constantly talk about this moment when Jesus was arrested.
Yeah, it's why is that?
Is this in the Bible?
Yes, it is.
Also, dumb question. How many versions of the modern Bible are there?
I don't know how many, but I can think of at least 12.
And what's the difference between them all? Why are there so many versions?
It depends on the time that they're translated. And if you'll notice, a lot of them will follow the earlier authors. Right? Bible scholars don't read anything outside of the Bible. So how good do you think their vocab is? How good do you think their translation skills are? Mm-hmm. Right, that's the problem. So those translations are generally pretty bad, and that's what I brought some examples of. Okay. And this is in the garden, actually, that I brought these slides for. Okay. And this is the Garden of Gethsemane, and where are we? We're with Jesus in the first, and he's being arrested.
Okay, so let's give some context. Yeah. Let's give some context to this. So who was Jesus, and why, and what is so good? What is so great about him?
Yeah, Jesus is a guy who walked around with 12 children, and
all the time,
and prophets, and a group of prophets. No, I'm just telling you what the text says.
He was just a guy who walked around with prophets. And
children.
So what was so great about him?
He called his disciples, and he calls them his children constantly, right? Remember, God.
So he's a pimp.
God blesses those who take care of the children, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
He takes care of these children.
He takes care of these children.
Okay.
There is a female underage called the Paidiska. When Jesus Christ is in his trial, his followers won't admit they're his followers, right? It's the whole, you're going to deny me, right? Jesus is all like, I'm going to get friggin' scandalized, right? And you're going to deny me. When he's in the garden and he gets caught, and those three, Peter, James, and John, they're keeping watch, the text says. They're guarding at a distance while Jesus takes naked boy that's been assigned to him. That's what the text says. Like a slave. So the depiction of this event is only in one version of the Bible. Is that right? Is it Matthew? No, it's in multiple, but the kid is only in Mark. Only in Mark? Yeah. Okay. And it's only like 2 sentences, right? Stephen, can you pull up the passage? I've got it here. Oh, you've got it there. Okay. Yeah. 1451. Is that first line?
I can pull up the passages and show the different versions. Yeah, let's do that. And how it translates as well. What passage is it?
Mark 1451.
1451. All right, cool.
Okay, a young man, what is it? Can you blow it up?
Yeah.
A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus when they seized him. That's all it says.
Yeah. Now look at the Greek.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, a young boy was assigned to him, having wrapped his with a medicated bandage, and they arrested him. A medicated bandage is what it says. Sindon, yeah. I've got the...
Okay, so I'm comparing yours to what this one says, so visibility. I can turn on Greek as well. Okay. I would love to see how this online Bible matches yours.
Check out the...
Okay, so right here, is that exactly what you're reading?
Yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Okay, which one of those Greek words is wrapped in a medicated linen?
Epigumno. This is on the... Okay, let's just start on the first line.
Maybe should we go to his computer, Steve?
Yeah, I'm punching it up.
That's it.
Okay.
Let's go to the first one. The second word in is neoniskos, and that is what we call a diminutive. Neoniskos. So it's a little of something else. And what is a neonias? A neonias is a boy.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a little boy.
Okay.
And they called Paidiska female prostitutes who were underage.
Okay.
And when I say underage, I don't mean
did they define underage down back then?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not under 18. It's before.
So okay.
Right.
So that was their word for before.
Age was. They didn't set a year.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Right.
The translation here says young.
And was there was there any sort of moral boundaries when it came to sex or prostitution based on pre?
Not from what I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, generally, in
Nothing.
different civilizations, you can still, like in Athens, you can still prosecute for somebody coercing what you and I would say is underage, them before puberty. Yeah, that's still, you can get in trouble for that.
Okay.
But it's not like it's not like there's compensation involved because, it's not like a crime like you and I consider a crime. It's more like a civil crime. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like being punched.
Right.
Yeah, you've damaged somebody so you can give them reparations for damaging them.
Okay.
That's what you do. But the pedagogy in antiquity, pedagogue, that person who raises, educates the children, right? That person, that's the kentauron, they called them. The centaur. It's their word for past.
Which means what?
Oh, with children.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and Chiron, remember Chiron, he's a centaur who is the master of Heracles. And now you know why Heracles has his boy Hylas. Do you understand? The sacred mysteries pass from generation to generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, again, what was so special about Jesus? He was a guy who walked around with kids.
Yeah. Apostles. Yeah. So, what was so special about him?
Was he the only one doing that?
What was so special about, like, and that's perfect. No, he's not. It's called being a leistes.
What is a leistes?
He was crucified between two of these. A leistes is defined, and I've got it on the next, let's see. Oh, here, look, this follows my presentation. So this is what the boy that was with Jesus, this is what he was with him, doing. He's following him. Notice they use this term sunakuletho.
And
right?
Where do you get this from? This image?
Thank you to the Victorians from Oxford who have given us this wonderful, fantastic lexicon of ancient Greek.
Okay.
1850s.
Okay.
After that book that you just had was...
Oh, okay.
Was written.
Okay.
And here it is. And notice that it's using soldiers. It's using term for soldiers and slaves. Right? So this kid is not just hanging out with Jesus, right? People have tried to explain this for a while. What was this kid doing with Jesus, right? Okay. Anyway, let's go on to the next one.
Double click. There you go. Now hit the green
blow
button.
It up. Look, this is what the kid is wrapped on his gumnos. And you say, what's gumnos? Gumnos
Fine cloth, usually linen.
Yeah. Fine cloth. Look where look at the second line. It says busines telemones, right? Uh-huh. So they're wrapping things in this
used
fine
for mummies.
Cloth, right?
And surgeons' bandages.
Mm-hmm. And bandages, and that's where I get it. On my end, when I'm reading the medical authors, they're all saying that you impregnate linen with drugs that you're going to treat the wound with, right? This kind of makes sense.
You impregnate women.
No, linen, I'm sorry.
You impregnate linen.
Yeah. Don't impregnate the women.
With drugs.
Yeah.
To treat wounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't that make sense?
This is the original text, and this right here is the translation that we have right now, which is, I'll punch it up for people, nothing but a linen garment.
Yeah. Notice how they took it from a bandage and turned it into.
Who did this? Who's responsible for this?
Crappy translators. People who do not work with the Greek. If you bring up the next one.
But is this an accident or is this intentional?
No,
these translations.
Intentional stupidity.
Are they intentionally leaving this shit out of the Bible? Because
no, it's bad training.
Oh, Okay.
It's just bad training.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Now watch this one. Okay, so that last one had businos on it. Well, what is the businos? It's fine linen bandage, right? They give you at the top. But then look at the reference on the second line. That's Euripides Bacchae. Okay, so this is something that they're using within some kind of religious ritual. And look at number 2 at the bottom. Roman numeral number 2, porphyrus. That's Hesychius. And who's Hesychius? Hesychius is a lexicographer from the 4th and 5th who comes in, and he has access to these ancient Greek lexicography texts, right? So before anybody was having any kind of substantial literature, the Greeks were already at the level, and these are ancient Greeks, they're already at the level of creating a language that is so highly specialized, we're still trying to translate it.
These translations that you've just pulled up, what does this have to do with, or what does this tell you about the scene of Jesus in the park?
That's exactly what this verse says right here. It says...
Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
Yeah, can we...
There you go. There you go. You just did it.
Yeah, and so he's... what happened? So Jesus is there, and it says the kid dropped the bandage and ran off naked. That's exactly what that says.
Okay.
The kid dropped the bandage and ran off naked.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it says specifically in 51 that it was epigumnos. And epigumnos is on his private parts.
An epigumno, which is the bandage that's soaked in drugs.
The sindone that's on there, right? And why? Why is Jesus with the kid? Remember when he first walks in the garden, he falls over, he stumbles over, and he's in pain. He's going through the exact same symptoms that doctors will describe.
Jesus is?
Of the drug users. Yeah, it's in this chapter. It's in Mark 14. Yeah.
So he's tripping.
It says that he's exceptionally fearful, right? So it looks like he's in some kind of psychotic fear, and he's screaming about, "Take it, don't let me do it." And he's with his kid. He's with this kid at the time, right? And he ends up with stuff on his face, stuff that is like big drops of porphyrin.
I'm talking about bodily fluids.
Blood is how it's typically, that's how it's translated. It's not the blood that he's got, it's purple. And he's got an antidote from the kid's. That's the galene, is the kid's semen. Heracles has to have Hylas. He has to have his boy. Zeus has to have Ganymede. On the Priapeic side, they call it Ganymede's. And the question is, do you drink from Ganymede's?
I don't.
Well, that's why you're not in charge.
Yeah, probably. All right, bring me back down to earth here. What's going on in the park again? So Jesus has the purple on his face.
Yeah, he's got the purple on his face.
So Jesus is having some sort of a psychotic fit, right?
He's having some kind of overwhelming emotional state that's hitting him so hard, he's falling on the ground. So he's got something on board that's causing him to stumble.
And it's 4 a.m. in the morning?
It's 4 a.m. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got who
he just came from
who wrote this, by the way?
Party with the kids. He just came from
Did one of the cops write this? One of the cops that arrested him?
No, this is Mark. Yeah.
Mark was there.
Well, no, Mark is telling you the secret things that you're not supposed to know.
So how does Mark know if he wasn't there?
Yeah, well, I don't care if he does or doesn't know. The fact is he's saying them.
Okay.
And that's what's scary.
Well, how do we know Mark didn't have an axe to grind against Jesus? You want to make Jesus look like a bad guy and make him look like a weirdo or a crazy person.
He could, maybe. I don't know, for all I know.
Right.
That's why I say we have to stick with exactly what the source is.
The point is that this is take it for what it's worth. This is what Mark said.
Yeah, and
Mark was not there.
No, it's Peter, James, and John, and the kid.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Mark, where did Jesus come from before this? In the scene, he came from the place where he was with all the kids in the upper room. That's where they came from, right?
In what room?
In the upper room. It's just the way to refer to the place. Look, it was shady, right? This is part of the cops. This is part of what the cops have on him, right? He sent out a couple of his boys to go scout out a place. And when he did, he told him, hey, you're going to come to this guy. And he's standing there and he's doing this. And you got to approach him and say, Jesus' boys, where do we need a place for Jesus to celebrate? And he says, take him in here. And he finds a guy and they take him up. And they get a shady backroom business. Remember, what does Jesus do with his boys? We all know this. That's why we're a crowd and we're angry and we want Jesus crucified. Now you understand why there was a friggin' crowd there. Yeah. A little bit brutal with him, weren't they? Well, yeah, they had good reason to be. He was with those 12 underage kids in that room washing feet. And you got to get it when you wash feet. Have you ever washed somebody's feet?
Not that I can recall.
How about a 12-year-old boy?
No, absolutely not.
Now, why wouldn't you? Do you have some kind of problem with Jesus?
Apparently I do.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's too bad because he ends up in the garden after this with the 3 older ones and he says, keep guard while he takes the young kid off to the middle of the garden. In the meantime, they're falling asleep while Jesus is rolling around in agony and doing what he's got to do to get for the Gethsemane from the boy. And that's the mastery here. The boy has some kind of antidote. Galen describes Yeah, it's not milky.
Galen describes this.
Yeah, as long with the girls exudate from their breast. You can milk. You didn't know you could?
I did not know that.
Okay, well you can, medically. Probably has antibodies in it to whatever the venoms they're using. Because these same girls, you cut them.
And this stuff?
You cut them and you wrap them with the snake venom. And that's why we all hold up the serpent. Right? We all know it. You see my tattoo, right? It doesn't
Which tattoo?
It doesn't say it was on a pole.
Show me the tattoo you're talking about.
It says it was on a tattoo. I'm just any of them. Just any of them. I'm waxing poetic. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Galen talks about this fluids that boys and girls create, and he talks about this being used as an antidote to snake venom specifically.
It's the Gethsemane. It's a Greek term that means the calm after the storm. Gethsemane.
I'm gonna sound like a complete idiot when I'm trying to ask you this question, but I'm to the best of my knowledge, at some point, the Romans tried to get rid of all these texts and get rid of all of the links to drugs, right? And they tried to rewrite history.
The Romans, I wouldn't call those people Romans. I would say the Christians.
The Christians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who were the first Christians?
You know who the first one was? Is the guy on the cross with the head of the ass.
Jesus was the first Christian.
That's the first depiction of Jesus.
The first depiction of Jesus.
Yeah, isn't that neat? If you knew the ancient cult, you'd have ears to hear, and you'd know what that means. The metamorphoses will teach you everything, the transformations.
Can you expand on that? What was the first depiction of Jesus?
Him on a dude on a cross, very crude, dude on a cross with the head of an ass.
With the head of a donkey.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't know Nicander.
No.
No, Nicander was a priest. 1st century BC. Late 2nd. 1st. And at the time, they were all super well educated. Mm-hmm. And this guy Nicander, he's quoted by later authorities all over the place. They're going to find Nicander in Herculaneum. You watch.
So the first depiction of Christ was a man being crucified with a donkey head.
Correct.
And So who was Jesus Christ?
Yeah, Christ is a title.
Christ is a title.
Yeah. Christ is a title, yeah, and it's a pharmaceutical term.
Christ is a pharmaceutical term.
Where you put,
in Greek.
Yeah, yes, and it means I have several examples of it to show you, but it means you can perform an incrustation. They called it, where I give you a drug. What you'll see me do is I'll spit on the ground. Yeah, I'll spit on the ground and I'll use a combination of earth and spittle. My own spittle. Why am I spitting? Did you know Jesus walked up and spit in people's faces?
I thought you said Christ was just he was an actual person?
In the text. Who is he in the text?
Who is he? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's most important.
Okay.
And that text is going to show us history, right? You can say what you want about the text as long as we're translating it accurately. So what is the text? Because the text is our evidence. This is science, man. I refuse to give over the discipline of classics to the humanities people. It needs to be taken by the scientists. Linguistics is a science. I'm not a linguist. I'm a classical philologist.
What's the difference?
Linguists do general stuff, right? Like how language acts under certain circumstances, or it's the basic mechanics.
Allegra was a linguist.
Yeah, classicists do just Greek. And then there are some that do Latin. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So tell me more about Christ.
Yeah. So it's a drug term, and it means to be putting that thing in your eye. Can I show you some?
So to Christ or to christen means to put drugs in your eyes.
Originally, yeah.
Originally. Okay. So how did this get turned into the person everybody knows as Jesus Christ?
The fairy tale? For example, you can talk about the age of the apostles, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody gets in their mind the images of bearded adult men, right? People don't realize those are teenagers.
The apostles. We're talking about the picture of like Jesus with the apostles at the Last Supper.
Yeah, notice they're all bearded men.
They're all bearded men, yeah.
Yeah. What happened? Because the original description, he's constantly calling them children, and they aren't. Yeah,
in the original description, who's constantly calling?
Okay, James and John are two of Jesus's boys.
Yes.
He picked them up one day on a boat.
What do you mean boys? Like they're his homies? Or like they're his children?
Yeah, what do? That's the question. They end up together a lot with boys in tombs.
With boys in tombs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Multiple documents show that.
Okay.
We have St. Cyril coming out of one of these graveyards with a bunch of venom, it says, bleeding out his and a couple of prostitutes with him. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Every Heracles has his Hylas.
What was
Yeah.
How common was prostitution in these cultures back then, in this society?
Define.
How was prostitution viewed, and how ubiquitous was prostitution? And what was it looked down upon? Was it just an accepted part of society, kind of like drugs were? Oh
God, we got to go to Cyprus. We got to go to Cyprus and worship Aphrodite, where once a year, your wife has two choices. Either she can shave her head and stay with you, or she can go to the public forum and pick up one of the local sailors and with him all night, not thinking about you, and come back the next day and be completely healed. Yeah. That's the devotion. That's the devotion to the Aphrodite. Remember, the Romans are children of Venus. So this is embedded. This woman-centric, gorgeous goddess, this is part of their medical system. It's part of their healing. And so those, you asked me about later, the Christians would call them prostitutes. And that's where you and I get our term of prostitute from.
Okay.
and the negative. You would never. These are priestesses of Aphrodite. You have made sacred the institution of.
Why would the wives have to go have with sailors? And who were the sailors?
I don't know. Sometimes you get the need.
Who were the sailors?
Look, they come in and they go. And it's a religious festival. If you have a problem with that, that's between you and your wife. Now, what kind of instruction does that give to the people, to the men on Cyprus?
What kind of instruction?
What do you learn from that kind of religious festival? Or once a year, your wife gets to go have with whomever she wants.
Are the wives wanting to do this?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to ask them when they're doing it. But since they all come back with smiles.
It says that? They come back with smiles?
No, I made up they come back with smiles. But they do it every year. And you only have one choice. Shave your head and enter. And why do they say shave your head? Because that shows that you're in the sign of mourning. That you're mourning the loss of Adonis. That you're mourning that. So you stay with your husband. You see the loyalty? She's loyal to him even in death. The women who keep their hair, that's resurrection, baby. Right? They're out there. This is Easter. Yeah. Yeah. Does that kid look exactly like you? Yeah. Half-sisters and brothers.
Huh.
Yeah. Children of Aphrodite. Right? Sons of God. These are Romans. That's what the Romans called themselves. Right? Offspring of Aphrodite herself. It's gorgeous. Once you have access to these texts, you'll be surprised. It'll open up a whole new world that is the actual history. History means inquiry. Right? It's not a linear chain of events. It means inquiry. And specifically, Historia were the questions that you ask oracles. And who are oracles? It's some 14-year-old girl totally bombed on drugs. Singing.
Wow.
Singing, yeah. Her words, they're divine. If we follow them, we're going to end up at democracy. Okay, remember how Jesus was screaming on the cross?
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to scream while you're on the cross, right? You don't have to.
All right.
But he not only was a screamer, he was a dyer early. He didn't die of the crucifixion. Jesus Christ did not die of a crucifixion. He screams out, and then, boom, he's gone. And it says the soldiers are surprised. They report it to Pilate. They're like, he died early, bro. Nonus tells us that vinegar that they offered to Jesus on the cross and the sponge, that was an antidoton to the dipsas. The dipsas is the horned viper of North Africa, and its venom makes you really thirsty. They were trying to give him an antidote. His followers, all his prophets that were around the cross, they were trying to give him an antidote. He didn't get it, and he overdosed. He's dead. That's it.
How did they administer the snake venom?
Oh, that's the brother.
While he was on the cross?
No. Oh, no, he had it already by the time. When he shows up in the garden, he's got it on his face.
Oh, so he had already been given this. He gave himself the snake venom?
That's why he's going through the gyrations and I'm feeling bad. He's already going through it. It was the boy's.
That was the antidote to it.
That is the antidote. And he says, let this cup pass. What is that cup? In the Apocalypse, the Revelation.
Yes.
It says that cup is borne up by that theriac, by that galene. They're using the same. It's one rite. They're using the same drugs in the Apocalypse. And the great enemy of God is that lady's cup, which is full of porneia. You have to drink the boy's porneia
to survive.
In order to survive.
But why did he get this? Why did he take the snake venom in the first place?
Because he was a Christ.
So he overdosed. So he overdosed.
How are you going to prophesy? How are you going to prophesy?
He accidentally took too much, is what you're saying.
No, I don't think he took too much. I don't think he got an antidote. The texts are not saying.
He just didn't get an antidote.
Yeah, I think that's why Nonus says they were attempting that sponge, which, by the way, Nonus is corroborated by the Geoponica. The Geoponica is a Byzantine farmer's manual, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And in it, it says the vinegar, the oxus, that is the remedy. That's the common term for the remedy of the dipsass snake. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. So it's the chemical knowledge is all there. They were just using it, and it's, Heracles liked it in the eyes, though. That's the thing.
But how much later did he die from that moment in the park? How much time passed before he was crucified?
Yeah, it's at midday, isn't it? Midday. When's he shot out? I think it's during an eclipse.
Because there was like the Last Supper, right?
Yeah, during the eclipse. Yeah, no, it's later, right? Last Supper was the party all night, naked, right? It says specifically that Jesus was naked with his paideia, with his boys. And he's always calling them boys. He calls them my little ones. I've got some verses here where he calls them my little ones. Mm-hmm. Right? So what is he doing? He's perpetuating a cult that is a practical business, is if it's illegitimate because it's prosecuted by the government. And Julius Caesar was one of the people who started cracking the back of it because they kidnapped him. They were going to sell him off. And he got a ransom and came back and killed them all.
Wow.
Crucified them.
So I'm surprised it took the snake venom so long to kill him.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, so it was more than 24 hours from when he was crucified, from when he was found in the park?
No, he would have gotten it. So he went to the party with the boys at night. So that's when they would have done the administration of the flesh and the blood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was the next day he was crucified.
Remember, the Ophites still fellate for the sacred communion. Roman soldiers do too. Yeah.
So the sacred communion,
Mithraic, yes,
was a.
Your seed makes me high.
So not only was this stuff being used as an antidote, they were also mixing it with other stuff to get high?
It's polypharmacy. It's a ton of plants and animal substances. Some of them I laugh at. I'm like, oh, gee, how did they figure that out? I have no idea.
But didn't you mention that somehow the boy or either animals or humans were used to endogenously create drugs?
They tested on roosters. They tested drugs on roosters, and they would give them poisons and then feed them the antidote, cause them to swallow the antidote, and to see if that, Galen writes about that. He says you can do it on people too, and they do.
So were they giving the poisons to these people and then assuming that these people their immune system would react in a certain way and they could pull out, like, for lack of a better term, like the antibodies that we're using to fight the poison and use that to put into other people?
I think that's what's happening when they talk about breast milk.
Okay.
These priestesses will give off a breast milk. They cut their arms.
And they would give themselves drugs. And then they would
give themselves the venom over time in a wrap. Mm-hmm. And then
and their body would start fighting against it. And then they would pull out the breast milk and use that as an anti-venom.
As an anti-venom, yeah, essentially.
Or an antichrist.
It's not really an anti-venom either. It is a balancing drug.
Right.
So you're not stopping the venom. You're basically, the physicians say you're stopping the negative symptoms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, polypharmacy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Let's get some hemlock and some henbane, some aconite, some really poisonous stuff. And then,
do you think that their pharmaceutical knowledge and their drug knowledge, if we understood all of that today, do you think it would advance our knowledge currently in science and pharmaceuticals and the treatments of illnesses and disease?
Yeah, undoubtedly. And I tell people just that. They're thinking of making the human body the producer of the drug, right? Your body becomes, they're not thinking, okay, this person is depressed, therefore I'm going to hit them with this drug, right? This one drug, I'm going to see what happens to them and watch them, you know what I mean? They want to kill themselves? Oh, that's not going to work, right? That's not what they're doing. They're looking at using multiple drugs to basically create the potential that the human body has to make its own communion, to be a source of health. Right? Sacred name of Rome.
Right.
Is that health. It is that power. It is that extended capacity. It's why we insist that the vessels are virgins. Yeah. They direct us.
It's why we insist that the vessels are virgins?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. It's why that they have to be in a certain physical state, because the person becomes the vehicle of the drug. The cup is full of her. Yeah. That's her ejaculate. We are talking about the communion that is the ejaculate of a virgin.
Right.
An oracular virgin.
Right.
Yeah. And when I say virgin, I mean the kind that they put up on the statues. Right? Remember Athena? Athana.
Mm-hmm.
That's the exact image, the eidolon that they're creating is Athena. The Virgin, Holy Virgin. You don't worship the Holy Virgin?
Do I?
Yeah. What is your religion?
I'm not really religious.
Yeah, I didn't think so. It's a bunch of crap, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not according to you.
No.
According to you, it's way more than I thought it was. So why in the Bible do they explain that the guys who were being crucified next to Jesus were just thieves?
Yeah, that's how they translate it. That's how they translate it.
And again, this is not on purpose. They just accidentally did this.
How are you going to translate it?
But isn't it convenient that isn't it convenient for them that they left all this out?
Oh, you are right on top of it, detective. No, seriously, write your dissertation now. Why would you choose between a kid having a linen garment and a bandage on his parts? And why would you choose to present Jesus in a way that's not accurate to the sources? I'm not saying to anybody's interpretation. There's no room for interpretation here. It's just what are the sources saying? He's a laestace,
Which is a pimp.
which is basically a trafficker. Yeah.
Which was looked down upon, which was frowned upon back then.
Because it's an active, organized crime.
But a civil crime.
You've got boys of Galilee, and those boys of Galilee, they're entrenched in the.
But didn't you say that when the people approached Jesus in the park, you called them cops? They were like ancient
Roman
cops. Did they have chest cams?
No, but they had big weapons. He notes it, and I have that.
And he said,
slide.
and according to Matthew, the first thing he said is, "I am not a laestace or a trafficker."
Right. He said, "I'm not a laestace, man." He says, "Why did you come out here? Why did you come out here with all your heavy weapons like I'm a laestace?"
Right.
Right. Right. So.
Well, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was just trying to get the antidote.
Well, it could be, but he's making a big deal about it, right?
Right.
For some reason. Mm-hmm. And he's standing there contextually right next to a kid. So, maybe he's trying to give an answer for why there's a kid with him in a public park at 4 a.m.
If I'm his lawyer, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. No, more importantly, what's that kid actually doing? And I think that's the question.
What do you think?
The evidence only shows that he could be one of these boy dudes who's providing the people who are in the cult with the galene.
Okay.
With the thing that's going to balance whatever it is
communion
that Jesus has taken that's put him into a state. And it doesn't work, and he ends up dying on the cross. And if you notice in the resurrection, we just had Easter. Did anybody notice that it's another boy?
We just had an Easter and we just had an eclipse.
Yeah, another boy with Jesus in the tomb. Don't you remember?
No.
Yeah.
I never read the Bible.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't. That's right. Oh, we got to start reading the Bible more.
Should I read it?
Yeah, I think you should.
Which version should I read?
The Greek version. Yeah. Yeah. Come to my class. Come to my class. I'll have you 20 weeks. 20 weeks. I'll have you with just enough to be dangerous.
These texts that you're reading and that you're translating, are these the original sources of religion, of Christianity and Catholicism and baptism and all this stuff? Is this like the originals?
Yeah, this is the language that held that all of those texts. So the New Testament's all written in ancient Greek, right? What you call the Old Testament, and I'm going to shock people with this one. What you call the Old Testament, which people say is written in Hebrew, right? Which is not a language that I work with. I had to take a little bit of modern Hebrew when I was there, just because it was part of the, education. And, but the text that you think is written in Hebrew is not. It's a Greek text that's written in the 3rd century. It's a Hellenistic text called, that you call the Torah or the Old Testament. That is not an original Hebrew text. Now, how can I say that? What we have is the Septuagint that I'm talking about. It's the Greek Old Testament. Do you understand Greek Old Testament? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's the oldest form that we've got.
Okay.
Okay. The whole big deal about the Dead Sea Scrolls was they said, we finally have some Hebrew, because none of it survives, right? Hebrew is only an 8,000 word, ancient Hebrew, 8,000 word, unique word count language.
Okay.
Which puts it in the realm of something you could expend by the end of your breakfast. 8,000 words.
Right.
That's not a lot.
Okay. And the Dead Sea Scrolls were all in Hebrew?
The Dead Sea Scrolls were fragments in Hebrew and fragments in Greek, and everybody assumed, this is the original in Hebrew, right? Because now we're following church history. You and I live in a time in the stream, the time stream. We live at a time when we think that there was an original Hebrew text of the Old Testament, but there wasn't. It doesn't exist. Right? And to show people the Greek, what's the proof? What's the proof? The proof is when you read the Septuagint, that is the Greek Old Testament, it does not read as a translation. It reads as an original. It uses Greek idiom. It's like a fingerprint on a language, and it's got Greek.
How can you tell it reads
Greek fingerprints?
How do you discern the difference, whether it be an original or a translation?
Oh, you can tell. It's easy to tell because colloquialisms don't translate, right? And so it's like tagging it. So you're testing this language to see what its age is. Okay. So you tag it with certain things, and one of them is colloquialisms, right? The other one is technical vocabulary. You cannot translate from a higher technical degree to you can't translate from a median technical degree to a high technical degree.
Okay.
You can go down the slope. You can take something that's not technical, right, and make it more technical, right? You can force that. But you can't drift upstream.
Right.
So if the original is going to have the highest degree of technicality.
Yes. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were not the highest degree of technical writing. They were lower. They were lower than the Greek. What was the word? The book you're talking about.
They're Hebrew back translations because at the time, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're Hebrew back translations. So they took the Greek.
Of what specifically?
They took the Greek and they said, how do we translate this into Greek?
Okay.
That's why you lose all the technical terms because they didn't have them in their language.
And what I'm asking is what? God, that's crazy. This is the first podcast I can remember where the lightning has been this crazy, this loud. So the Dead Sea Scrolls came from where? What were the sources of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
So those caves in Qumran, right? They've dated these things to probably, I've heard as early as 1st BC, but all the way up to 2nd Anno Domini. So somewhere in that range, somebody is taking the Greek text that we know is already established because people are quoting it, right? We know, for example, they had the Book of Enoch in Greek because people are quoting it in Greek. So that's how you can like track your library. Where's your library at the time? Right. That's how you track it. By the way,
have you read the Book of Enoch?
Yeah. I read the Giza fragments of it. I can say that much.
What do you think about all these people talking about Anunnaki aliens flying around and building pyramids back in the day?
I think it's silly.
You do? Damn it! You know how many podcasts we've done with people who claim that they're experts on the Anunnaki?
Yeah, seems to be a big area. But they were drug users, bro. What can you expect? That's what they taught in the Giza text. It says they taught the women the art of drugs.
So these weren't aliens; they were just drug users. They were just drug addicts.
They were giants, bro.
They were giants?
Yeah.
Like real giants?
Gigantos. That's
Steve, are you crunching?
Oh, you can hear that.
Oh my God!
No, I liked it.
It's this is the ASMR podcast. There's stimulus everywhere.
They taught them the drug craft. That's what the text says. And you don't understand, man. They've got Medusae at the time. You say, what?
Wait. Go back to giants.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, giants?
That's the Greek word, gigantos.
Giants meaning physically they were huge people?
No.
Okay.
Right? No. They had a superior knowledge of the drugs, and they had a group of women who were called the Medusae. And the Medusae could hit you with a drug on an arrow and paralyze you. And then they would take you and do things to you. And that's how a group of these women functioned. That's how they hunted. They hunted men. You can imagine the society.
Women that hunted men.
Yeah, you have to kill 3 men in order to get married.
Huh.
Yeah. And they don't really marry you. They just farm men.
And when is this? What time period? What is this?
This is Bronze Age, late Bronze Age.
Bronze Age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Think 1200, the peak at 1200, say BC.
1200.
This is when the great queen Medea is around. Yeah. And
so back, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, this is great. I'm loving this. But back to my original question. How, fundamentally, how did your understanding and learning all of this ancient Greek change your understanding of how religion is preached today and the story of the Bible?
It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. What they teach now and do now is not even a hair's breadth of semblance to what they did originally. Yeah, you don't understand. A mystery is not a word that means a question or something you don't know. Right? The mystery is the performance that brings you through death back into life. And once you've been initiated into that environment, you're given keys, things to open up, a way to decode what's being said so that you understand what's at the higher level. Now, if you're like Jesus, you do that with 12 children. People don't realize that. The apostles are just children.
Pump the brakes. We'll get there.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit. Okay.
We're going to get there. Don't worry.
Okay.
How big of a gap is there between the original texts and the Bible people read today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are the texts that are ultimately assembled into what you call the Bible.
Right.
Those are the same thing, right? This is the
so there's only some pieces, like there's a huge load of ancient Greek texts, and only certain pieces are cherry picked for the Bible.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. What's the common thread that's uniting all of these things together? It's the cults, man, and the operation of the cults. They're driving the literature at the time. Yeah, they've got a hostage and they're bringing it in. And you can get that from the read. All you got to do is bring up those cults and their activities. The stuff the early Christians were doing, they're collecting blood. And this is from their own insiders who are telling us this. Eustathius tells us this. And he says, oh my God, he says, look what they're doing in these ceremonies. And he goes on to describe it, and I've described it in detail. But they collect the blood.
Who is this guy?
Fetal blood.
Who's Erechthonius?
This king of this serpent king.
Can you pull up a description of him, Steve? I need Wikipedia's description to give me the truth, so I know how to keep Ammon in check.
Erechthonius in Greek mythology. King Erechthonius was a legendary early ruler of ancient Athens. According to some myths, he was born of the soul.
Autochthonous. Yeah. Exactly. And what happens is Hephaestus comes along and he's like, wow, look at the beauty of what we've made.
He was adopted and raised by Athena.
With this virgin Athena. Her name is Athana.
Okay.
In Dorian.
So how did we get, so explain to people listening how we got to Erechthonius from Solon creating democracy.
It's that line. It's the drug-using mystery that drives everything. Cicero says his life was begun again. He was reborn. What happened?